We hope you'll hoot and holler and feel real jolly. I hope that you will hoot and holler and feel real jolly. Now, if these stories conjure a sweet tear from your eyes, don't worry. Dolly says you'll never do a lot unless you're brave enough to try. Cheers, all. Oh, that's delicious. So, let's give it up for our first brave teller. He's first in my book, sorry Tony, and he's also an executive at First Bank. So, will you please give a warm welcome to our councilman, Mr. Ronnie Martin.
So, my story is about a magic box, and this story begins with a trip to my grandmother's house. Growing up, we did not have a lot of resources to do fun things with, so our fun thing was to go to our grandparents' house. That's just what we did. And so, on this particular trip to my grandmother's house, I walked up the stairs. Actually, my grandmother lived in an apartment, so this was a garden-style apartment complex where you walk up the stairs, there's a door on the front and there's a door on the back, and it's an enclosed breezeway, so you've got apartments on the left and apartments on the right, so it's just kind of a large box. Well, on this particular day, like most days I went to my grandmother's house, when you walked in, there were two other people that lived with my grandmother, and that was my great-grandmother and then my Uncle Ken. And so before I tell you about those people, let me tell you that it took a little getting used to walk into my grandmother's house. And I don't know if, I'm not talking about anybody else's grandmama, but a lot of times when I walked into my grandmother's house, it kind of smelled a little funny. And so, it was some combination of mold and sort of wet socks, if you will. So, we walked in this day, and of course you're greeted by that smell when you come in. And my grandmother's in there, and my great-grandmother's in there, and my Uncle Ken's in his bedroom. So when you walk in, you say hello. Well, my grandmother was Big Granny. And so you can imagine why we called her Big Granny. Okay? She was like the 400-plus pound variety. And Big Granny didn't wear normal clothes the way I wore normal clothes. She had like this giant sheet that was kind of wrapped around her, but it was more sort of like this muumuu. It was this full-length thing that she didn't have normally some stuff on under it, so she was kind of all over the place. This kind of smells funny. But you walk back to my Uncle Ken's room, and because we went there so often, when I walked into Ken's room, it was a little bit like going into my room. And so if there was anything ever different, it was very easy to notice. And so on this particular day, there were different things in my Uncle Ken's room. And to tell you a little something about Ken, if you've ever had or been around a special needs individual, my Uncle Ken was born with some disabilities. He was developmentally delayed. And so he was about 25, and I was about 5 or 6. Which made us great play companions because he was happy to give me his time, and everything that I wanted to do was just fine with Uncle Ken, right? So Uncle Ken had this thing where he thought he was Elvis, and he could sing, so he was a pretty good singer. But he had this big poofy hair, and he always had these really bushy sideburns. And so my grandmother, I can remember fussing at him pretty regularly about, you need to shave, and you need to take a bath, and all this kind of stuff. I can remember hearing this. And so Ken, at any particular moment, would look like someone who had shaved in about 50% of his face every day in the week. So he had these layers on his face. And so it was a little bit like a puzzle, right? But on that day, I walked in, looked around, saw this stuff in Ken's room, and I said, Ken, what is this stuff? And as I walked in, I can't remember the specific things that were there, but what I always do remember is Ken had this carpet in his room that was like this animal. And I say that because it was this really plush, thick carpet that as a 5-year-old, when you walk in with you're small, it kind of grabs your shoes. So it's this really thick carpet. And that's the only memory I have. I don't specifically remember the things we were looking at. But I asked Ken, I said, Ken, where'd you get this stuff? Where is this stuff? And he didn't even look at me. He just says, these things are from my magic box. And I stopped and I kind of waited for him to say more, and he didn't. So I said, what magic box? And he turned to me, eyes open, so then I get the response, that I'm really looking for. And he's excited, so I'm immediately excited. And he says, would you like to see? Well, yeah, of course I want to see. Show me this magic box. So we head outside, and as a normal 5 or 6 year old, I'm super excited about this journey. I'm thinking, we're getting ready to go see something fantastic, right? So we need to pack a lunch, I need some sandwiches, and I need some stuff. We need supplies. And so we're walking down these stairs, and I'm talking as fast as I can possibly talk. I'm asking him question after question. And these are the types of questions that I'm really not waiting for him to answer, because it really doesn't matter what the answer is. I'm just excited we're going. Where are we going? What's it look like? When are we going to get there? And all of a sudden, he abruptly stops. And I hear this loud, screeching, metal screeching sound that basically terrifies me. So I'm scared immediately, like frozen scared. And before I can respond, within a second, I feel myself being lifted off the ground. Well, again, because I'm terrified, I couldn't protest, I couldn't really do anything. And as I'm coming off the ground, I see this square window or this doorway. And as my eyes break the plane, what I see is trash. And so Ken puts me in this box with this trash. And so, terrified from the screeching sound, terrified that I've just been put in this box of trash, the next sensation that hits me is I start to sink, right? So this is a little bit like being in the ball pits, where you jump in the ball pits and you kind of sink to the bottom. But fortunately, I wasn't heavy enough to sink too far. So I couldn't really move, but I couldn't sit upright or stand up either. Well, again, this is happening super fast. Before I can even get to the surface, I feel Ken's weight on top of me. So he's jumped into this box of trash. Now, that really scared me, because what I knew is Ken was a lot bigger than I was. And if he's on top of me, pushing me down, I got problems, right? So I sort of panicked and moved to the side. And the good thing is, because he was heavier than me, he sank like a rock to the bottom. And so as I came up and could really see where I was, my eyes focused on 3 arrows that were in the corner of this box. Well, these were arrows for a bow, and I had never seen a bow, and I'd never seen an arrow. But what I knew immediately was this was something that I didn't have, and this was something that I probably could never buy. So it was a treasure immediately. So I start scrambling to get to these arrows, because what I know is if I don't get to them first, Ken's bigger than me, he's going to take them from me, and then they will no longer be mine. So I scramble to the arrows, scoop them up, toss them out of the doorway, and immediately grab my arms, pull myself out. Wasn't thinking about having somewhere to land, wasn't tall enough to step out, so I just kind of smashed into the concrete. Well, it hurt, and the memory I have is the pain of hitting, the asphalt when I hit the ground. And so the next thought that went through my mind was, am I okay? Can I walk? And so I stand up and sort of, look around, and I'm not bleeding, and I move a little bit, and I can, as soon as I realize how my body works, I find the arrows, scoop the arrows up, and I'm gone. So I head back to the steps out of my grandmother's apartment. And as I sit there, I can remember thinking my heart was beating so fast, and my adrenaline was pushing so much. And I turned around and I thought, where's Ken, right? Am I safe? Is he anywhere near me? Is he going to take my stuff? And turned around and he was nowhere to be seen. I started thinking, as my heart rate started to drop and I sort of calmed down, I can remember the first thing that I thought was, I wonder when I come back to my grandmother's, what will be in the magic box. And so, if you haven't figured it out by yet, the magic box at my grandmother's was a dumpster. And the real treasure that we found in the dumpster that day was really not the arrows. It was the understanding of who I was, where I was from, but more importantly, the value of people in our lives, the experiences that we share with those that we love. And so, it gave me this perspective that the magic box was really a story within a story. It was a story about the innocence of our childhood, specifically the innocence of my childhood. And it was the reality that that innocence gives us the ability to not feel shame about where we come from. But it also gives us that same innocence, gives us the courage that we need to, without fear, take ourselves on our own journey and choose our own path, and to take ourselves to a place where we want to be, that we can be proud of. So, the magic box was my discovery of self-discovery. Thank you.
That's how